All right, fact check this podcast. And tonight I'm joined by my friend James Jenneman. And what have you been up to lately, James? Because last time you and I talked, it was like the final episode of your podcast. And
Yeah,
then,
man. I don't know, dude. It's been so long. I have my podcast up because I was going to have to give the link. Yeah, it's been like damn near 2 years since I retired from podcasting. And I got to tell you, like, sometimes I miss it. I kind of miss blogging too. Like, I actually thought I was going to start writing again just this week. But man, writing's a lot of work. So, I mean, just,
yeah, I've got my Substack, and I don't write as much as I should. And that's my own fault. Like, when we had gotten to go into a church, and I really liked the church. I liked everybody at the church, and I really liked the preacher, but I wasn't really getting a lot out of the services. But being there, I was getting ideas for stuff that I wanted to write about. And then life got crazy, and like shit happens, and we ended up kind of getting out of the routine. And with my work schedule the way it is, once you break out of a routine, it's hard to get back into it. And then with my wife's schedule, and then my kids both have, because like we were talking about before the show, my kids are 15, 14, and 13. And so they all have just a smorgasbord of crap that they're doing all the time. And so it got hard to keep up, and we got out of it, and we really need to get back into it. And I think that's probably going to be a resolution once the school year starts and things kind of settle down, is to get back into that routine. But yeah, I was really enjoying writing, but man, it takes a lot to just put out a piece, like writing something, especially if you want to do a really good job with it. Because I was writing about biblical type stuff, and so it would take me 2 weeks to get a piece out, just because I need to get all of my scriptures right. I need to get all the references. Like, there's so much stuff.
When you have to research and stuff, it's even like, I mean, I guess on one hand that kind of gives you a little bit of structure. Like, I don't know. I used to blog. Like, I blogged. I think I got pretty faithful about putting out a post like once a week. I think every Monday I'd sit down and write in the morning before work. It was so long ago. Like, it was before I guess I like identified as libertarian or whatever, but like I hadn't really read anything. I think I was really just like writing about like corporate culture and stuff like that, because I was in human resources at the time. Don't mind the stereotype, but I think that's what I was writing about. And like, I even got some guest blogging spots. Like, I was on like an HR, like a bigger blog. And then I don't know, I just stopped. And every time I tried to pick it back up, like even journaling, I was journaling daily for a while. Then I went on vacation and stopped, and then didn't pick it back up when I got back. So it really is just kind of about building that habit. Maybe we should do like a post-liberal writing group or something like that. Or, maybe just find our friends, whoever they are. It doesn't matter what their like political ideology is. So that's my call. Yeah, if anybody wants to like be in a little accountability group to write, hit me up. My Twitter's on the screen there.
I like that a lot, because I do need some accountability to write. And so Mark Metz and I talk pretty regularly, and we go to football games together and stuff, and like we've gotten to be legitimately good friends over the last few years. And so Mark, I'll write something, and then Mark will be like, "Oh crap, I haven't put out anything on mine Substack for a while. I should probably write something too." And so then he'll write something, and then later on he'll write something, and I'll be, "Oh, I'm slacking. Now it's my turn." So like we do kind of.
I'm jealous of Mark's output. Like, I mean, he writes, once a month maybe. I don't even know.
I know. Yeah, and we both.
Plus, he's so profound. Everything he says is so smart. Like, it makes me feel inferior. That's another thing.
And we talk about it. It's like, man, I need to get more stuff out, and I do. I don't know. Somehow I managed to still sound like a dumb redneck whenever I write, even though it's just written form. It still comes across as dumb redneck. I guess it's a gift. But speaking of the stereotypes and stuff, that kind of gets us to the idea that started the conversation to have this conversation. And we're probably not going to linger on it too terribly long, because there is a lot that you already connected a lot of dots with talking about the HR stuff and and other things, to other things that go along with this. But this was from, gosh, when was this? From May. So
it was a while ago. Yeah, I took the entire month of June off of social media. I wasn't checking instant message, or not instant messages. What the hell is this? 1999. I wasn't checking DMs. I wasn't tweeting. I wasn't on Facebook. I wasn't on Discord. I did my little like last hurrah as a Libertarian Party guy, and went to the convention in DC. Got to see Trump give his speech. That was amazing. Amazing in the sense that like it was just crazy. I was on edibles at the time. It was a pretty good speech to begin with, but like he was just standing there at the podium. I mean, like if you watched it on TV or whatever, like that was one thing. But if you were standing like, you know, front and center where I was, he's like, I mean, just all around me, boos, deafening, boo, boo, boo. And Trump is up there not missing a beat. I want you to endorse me. If you don't do that, I want you to vote for me. You all give me your votes. And that's all that matters. I'll put it in Libertarian in my, you know, all this stuff. I do a terrible Trump, but whatever. Like, he just didn't miss a beat. He just stood there and talked in the face of all this booing. And then there was Jeremy Kauffman right behind me, like screaming at the Trump people with his little socialism, MAGA equals socialism sign. And Star Child, the kind of sex worker, like non-binary person from California, was climbing on chairs, wearing a dress. He got tackled by security. It was just insane. So anyway, yeah. So after that, I took a month off social. Sorry, I'm rambling. I took a complete month off social. I was completely isolated from the rest of the world. It was great. It was wonderful. I recommend everybody do it. I might start doing like a week off every month. It's like a little fast, and fasting, I think, you know, I mean, obviously I get a lot of pleasure from food. And so like a food fast is probably good for me too, but a social media fast is just as cleansing. So anyway, back to that tweet. Sorry, from May, which was months ago.
Yeah. To whoever posted that paywalled garbage about how base gays come from homophobic families, no, most gays over the age of 20 or so come from homophobic families. Base gays come from seeing the absurdity of politicized performative queerness and rejecting it. And I thought that was fascinating, and I thought that was a really interesting topic to talk about, because I have had and currently have a lot of gay friends, and all of the ones who are very based and I guess like don't cave into a lot of the exceptionally queer stuff, they are exactly what you described. Like they see all of that and they just reject it. They're like, this does not represent us. And I've also, so my ex-wife is now gay and and they go to Pride stuff every year, have for as long as we've been divorced. And they'll even drag the kids along to it. And they have, because of the insanity of some of the Pride events, it has kind of radicalized my kids against some of that stuff. Like, which is crazy. But like, so my daughter, a really good smart kid school in the fall. She'll be going into her freshman year, and she got accepted into like a really good school. And so when they went and toured the school and everything, like they were talking about the different clubs and different stuff that they have at the school, and they have a Pride club. And like her mom and her mom's girlfriend were super excited about the Pride club. And after she came home from like the tour of the school and everything, she's like, they got a Pride club. She's like, I get enough Pride at home at mom's house. She's like, I'm not joining that. I'm like y'all have like pushed the kids with some of that insanity to like shy away from some of that stuff, which I try to stay out of it. Like I don't really care. Just, you know, don't try pushing anything ridiculous on my kids, and I'm fine. And they have just been a part of the insanity enough that it has turned my kids off to it a little bit. And that's where you see some of the based gay stuff come from. Is it's not the homophobic stuff. It's or whatever that piece was. I think I actually read that piece, and now I can't remember anything about it because it didn't actually.
I think it was Martha Bueno or like one of the it was like a libertarian woman and like one of the progressive ones, so not like Angela McArdle or somebody like that, who wrote it. And listen, I'm kind of with your daughter. Like, I mean, like so the company I work for, I don't work in HR anymore. I'm a technical writer, which is like the opposite of HR almost. But the HR department at my work for Pride did like a big event one morning last month, and it was to benefit like an organization in Atlanta that caters to LGBT youth. And look, I was a gay kid once, and I know what happens when adults want to benefit LGBT youth. Like the straight lady that runs our HR department, who doesn't know a single gay person and lives in the suburbs of Cincinnati or whatever, doesn't know what benefit LGBT youth means. And like, don't get me wrong, like the vast majority of people at these organizations, like, are actually there to help the kids or whatever. But it only takes one person to ruin dozens and dozens of lives. And I'm not comfortable like supporting my own employer in donating money to an organization like that. I mean, it's the kind of organization that like encourages kids to run away from home and stuff. And I get that a lot of kids are in really dire situations and like those kids do need help. But for the vast, vast majority of kids, even if your parents are a little bit phobic or a little non-supportive or whatever, I think home is probably the best place for them still. And in reality, I mean, most like full disclosure, I mean, I had sexual experimentation or whatever with peers, with kids that were my age growing up from high school and a little bit before that and stuff. And I'm the only one of like all the people. There's probably like 4 or 5 guys that I experimented with when I was a kid. I'm the only one who turned out gay. And I wasn't the one who initiated any of it, like they just were like, we've got these things and we don't know what to do with them and let's play with them. Like, I mean, that's like what kids do sometimes.
But that's like you said, even if it is not necessarily a particularly friendly environment, even so, home is still going to be the better environment than running away and getting caught up in God knows what else is going on out there in the world. I mean, you hear enough stories and read enough stories, and I've covered enough stories about the insane shit that goes on, like, out in the world, that running away, like, and having organizations that actually support that actually like, think that that's a good idea for kids to do stuff like that. Like it's not hard to see how that could radicalize even the most staunch allies. Like you're encouraging objectively poor decisions, poor life choices.
Yeah.
But
and, like, I mean, kids are resilient. They're anti-fragile, like Jonathan Haidt talks about. He's not the one who came up with the phrase, but he talks about it in the context of children. That's not to say that there's not stuff that'll scar them for life. Or like I said, I just posted on Twitter today. By the time I just realized that this morning when I was texting with my dad, but by the time I was about 10 years old, my parents had instilled in me like 3 values. There was abortion is bad, socialism is bad, and the gold standard is good. And those 3 things, pro-life, anti-socialism, and pro-gold, like, those are the 3 things that I have never changed my mind about, because I was a 10-year-old who believed this stuff. And, I mean, after high school, I graduated from high school, came out of the closet, and immediately went to the political left. I was a Michael Moore guy. And, I supported Howard Dean in 2004 and stuff like that. But I never lost those 3 values: pro-life, anti-socialism, and pro-gold. So I think, and I mean, that's not a universal rule. Like my sister disagrees with me on all 3 of those things, I would imagine. But also she wasn't quite as like into that kind of thing as I was when we were kids. Like she wasn't sitting there watching the presidential debates with our parents. She was playing with dolls. She just wasn't into it. But I was. So I guess what I'm saying is that like there are certain things that stick with kids, whether they're good or bad, but not everything does, and the damage that's done to kids is often long-term strengthening thing. Like, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger and all that. So I guess what I'm saying is that, if you're a kid and you're gay or trans or whatever, or you think you are, stick it out for a little bit longer. Like, your parents might not like the thing that you're doing or perceiving in yourself, but they still love you. They love you a hell of a lot more than those people at that organization that just want to bring you in to, indoctrinate you.
Right.
Or worse.
I think that's probably the most important thing of it is they're going to love you more than the people who are using you for some agenda, whatever the agenda may be. Talking about some of that though, and we did kind of touch on the libertarian side of stuff, and your is it going to be your final Libertarian National Convention or?
Yeah, man, I think it is. I mean, it's sad. Like, I'm getting a little bit emotional thinking about that. This has been my life since 2012. It's where most of my friends are. Like, it's tough, but it's so cringe. And like so I think, in my opinion, we're in a. Are you familiar with like the concept of like a liminal space where you're kind of not in one realm or another? You're kind of in the doorway between them. I think we've been there since about 2016. We're emerging on the other side here, like currently almost. But we've been in this really weird space where nobody really knows what's going on. And it's so important to me that people realize that like the 20th century is over, man. Like, nobody cares what you believe anymore. Like the liberal age where everyone had an ideology and they stuck by it. And like, these are my principles and I'm just going to vote for my principled candidate or whatever. Like, that's not the thing anymore. That was great for a previous age when people were ideological, but now we're just in the real world. I read a lot of Charles Haywood. Of course, you're probably familiar with him, The Worthy House. And he writes a lot about how ideology is kind of opposed to reality. And I think we had the luxury of being ideological in the 20th century and preceding, but we're not really there anymore. Like, nobody cares about your, how thefty taxation is, or like how logically consistent you are in your arguments,
Well, and that's just, I think that ties back to like the base gay conversation where, you see these ideological pushes that get so extravagant and so over the top that it pushes people away from it. And I feel like that's sort of what ended up happening with libertarianism post 2020. Yeah. Like 2020 happened, and there was a big push for the Mises Caucus, and Dave Smith was doing a bunch of stuff, and there were rallies everywhere, and there were state conventions and national conventions, and it was all like, we see the enemy in all of this state apparatus that is locking us down, that is trying to enforce mandates, mass mandates, vax mandates, whatever else is coming. And it's like, yes, that's the obvious enemy, and we should definitely stand against that. And then that was it. It was like, okay, we're going to be against this forever. And at some point, like, you have to actually do something to be against it. You can't just keep saying
my favorite thing in the world. My favorite thing in the world is how confident libertarians are that they're dismantling the state. Like, Michael Rechtenwald wants to wreck the regime. What happened? Can you still hear me, Justin?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, good. My computer crashed for a second there. He wants to wreck the regime. Like, what are you going to do? You're running for the libertarian candidate of the president of the United States. Like, in the year when the most like charismatic person to run for president since like Teddy Roosevelt is against this ancient decrepit mummy of a man. Like, how are you going to wreck the regime? So it's a little cringy. And then also, like, ideologically, I'm just kind of not all there anymore. So theoretically, taxation is theft. Like, I get it. You're taking my money from me that I earn to like human nature. It's kind of opposed to like you can be an ideological individualist where like, oh, it's my money and I'm going to keep it and I'm going to do what I want with it, and you can't, you know, pave the roads with it or whatever because I say you can't. But in reality, like, people collectivize. That's just what they do. It's part of human nature. We're not individualists in reality. Like methodological individualism that Mises uses to study human action, fine, yeah, that's how people make decisions, great. But you know, once you like actually look at how people actually act with one another, it's always interactions. It's always joining and forming and nationalizing and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, taxation is theft, but taxation is also pro-social. It's the only way you can build a social society is with some sort of extraction of funds. That's not to say that I support the federal government's taxation policies like that, but just in general, like as sort of a generic phrase, taxation may be theft, but it's also pro-social. And that to me is like the purpose. It's like the telos of humanity is to build societies. We don't exist as atomized individuals. We exist. You know, if I were to like put on my Christian hat, I would say like we're built to worship. Like that's why we were created, and we're going to worship something, and we're going to worship collectively, and that's the big thing. Now I'm going to take off my Christian hat because it makes me uncomfortable to wear it sometimes, but like that's kind of it, you know. I mean, we do collectivize, we group up, and we like work towards common goals. So that to me, like, it's not incompatible with libertarianism, but it makes libertarianism kind of irrelevant, if that makes sense. And actually, I think I'm echoing Matt Erickson a little bit. I heard him talking about this at this event that Thad Russell put on at Buck Johnson's house down in Austin several years ago.
I was there.
You were there?
Yeah.
Oh shit! All right. Oh yeah, that's right. That's where we met. Holy crap!
Yeah, that was the first time we met in person.
That's right. So wow, that blew my mind when Matt said that. I couldn't understand what he meant by individualism doesn't exist. But now, like, I can't even fathom the idea of individualism as like a reality existing. Like, it's only an ideology. It took me a few more years than it took Matt, but like I get it now, which is kind of cool. It's kind of a little growth, I guess.
What's like so for me, we lived pretty rurally, and then we got even more rural, and so like where we are, it's incredibly small, tight-knit community, and that's it. It's all about community. The more rural you get, the more you understand that. Like it's easy to believe in this like radical individualism if you live in a big city where you don't have any connect. You might live around 150 people and you have no connection to any of them at all. But when you live out in the middle of nowhere, right? If you live out in the middle of nowhere and you've only got neighbors, your dozen neighbors intimately, and it is a community. Like if I need something, I know everybody within 3/4 of a mile that I can call for that one particular thing if I don't already have it. There's a guy that has an auto shop down the road that if there's something that I can't do in my shop, he can do it, and I can get in there tomorrow and do whatever I need to do. There's a guy that lives about 5 miles away from here that anytime I have a window bust or something, I just go get a new window and he can install windows and doors and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a guy in town he's just on the other end of town. And if a window gets broken out in one of our vehicles, I call him and he can get me in that afternoon and swap out. Like, we know people all around that do and have all of the things that we need. And if there's something that they need that we have, like we all work together. It like we are a community. It's really cool to go to like the little local grocery store. My son went to the little grocery store with I can't remember who it was now. It was a friend of the family or whatever. But so he goes in and he took some stuff up to the register, and they're like, it was one of those things that like if you had the store card, you could get a discount on it. And they recognized him because he's been in the store with me so many times.
Oh yeah.
They were like, "What's your dad's phone number? We'll use his discount on it and get you whatever percentage off on it." Yeah. He's like, "What?" They're like, "Your dad. Like, what's his phone number?" And then it like dawned on him what they were talking about. But like, you don't get that in Evansville even, like, and not Evansville's not a huge city by any means, but you don't get that. Like
Evansville.
Right. It's like the fourth largest city in Indiana, and it's big especially for us. Like I live in this little town is probably 90 people. Like the big town in town is like maybe 3,000, maybe.
So this isn't political or cultural or anything. This is just me asking a question about small town living. But so we're watching Schitt's Creek. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we just started that, and a few weeks ago, I had never seen the movie Cars, and so we watched Cars, and it was all right. But we watched Cars 2, and it was terrible. But Cars 2 takes place in this little tiny town, and in both of those shows, it feels like everybody in town kind of has multiple roles. Like in Cars 2, like the doctor / mechanic / judge / mayor is all one person. And in Schitt's Creek, like the guy who owns the motel also runs the town, and like the mechanic is also the car dealership and all that. Is that like what it's like in real life, or is that just because they didn't want to hire more actors?
No, there is a large extent to it. I mean, that like the judge is probably also a farmer and probably also does something else. The guy who owns the hardware store probably owns a storage place and some other stuff. Like you'll have some people that like you got the Mexicans that own the Mexican restaurant, and you got an Asian couple that own an Asian restaurant, but like that's it. They have the Asian cuisine and the Mexican cuisine locked down. Like there are no other. There's no competition. Like
that's great.
But yeah,
I'm sure it's delicious too, huh?
There is a lot. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. Very. But there is a lot of that. The like people play different roles and everybody like more or less knows each other, at least to some extent. Whenever we moved here initially, people didn't really know me at all, and they only kind of knew my wife because she grew up here and graduated high school from here. And then once people started figuring out who she was, who her dad is, who her grandparents were, who like her family is and stuff, then people are like, oh yeah, I remember you. And then connections start getting made. And then I'm with her all the time whenever we because we go to town and do all of our shopping and stuff together. And so then people see me with her, and then now they know who I am. And now when I'm out, they see me with my kids, and now they know who all of us are. And we've only lived here for a couple years, and now like, everybody knows who we are. We, go to the courthouse and go wherever. And it's, I lived in fucking Evansville for 10 years and I didn't know shit for anybody. And like, it's so much different than city living. And
my zip code probably has more people than Evansville. I mean, I'm in like North Minneapolis where people are literally stacked on top of each other.
Yeah. So. Yeah, Evansville's like big. It's like 100,000. And who was it? Whenever the what was the catfish noodling chick was, maybe you might have been on your hiatus from social media. But,
the catfish noodling chick?
Yeah, the girl that noodles for go noodling. You catch them with your hand. You stick your hand down their throat and pull out the big catfish.
Oh, I never heard of that. That's repulsive. Thank you,
Hannah something. Anyway. Like she took off on Twitter and some other social medias really, really quickly and got a whole lot of attention. Talking about like feminism in redneck, like country chicks. And Amiri King was like bagging on her, just talking shit about her. And like, dude, she's objectively hot. You should probably shut the fuck up. And he was getting hounded about how like he's just a city boy and doesn't understand like hot country chicks. And he was like, I'm not a city boy. I'm from a small town of 30,000. I'm like, motherfucker, 30,000 is more people than the county I grew up in and the 4 counties that surrounded it. Like I went and checked like our population numbers, and the county I grew up in and the 4 counties around it totals for less than 20,000. Like your small town is bigger than the entire like the western tip of Kentucky. Like, no, you are a city slicker. You don't know anything about the country.
What was he saying about? Because I find it really fascinating how like smug people can be when judging people from the other side of the tracks or whatever. Like I don't know. So where I live, like is predominantly black or Somali, and like we have, I mean, I live in basically what was the ghetto. It's being gentrified a little bit, but it's a community that I don't really belong to. I'm not saying this is like a bad thing, but I feel like a guest here. And to me, that's really important. Like, I'm not a person who's like, who believes in like cultural appropriation and all that stuff. I don't think that people own their culture, but I do think that cultures do need to be fostered and respected and not like diluted and watered down. That's yet another thing that I've kind of modified my position on vis-a-vis libertarianism. I was like a strict open borders guy until fairly recently, and it was not important to me at all. Like, it's not that I didn't think about it, it's that I thought that it was just completely dumb to even consider this, that when you bring in a lot of people who aren't members of a particular culture, that they don't just like augment the culture, they actually damage it. And so, and I know that I'm like verging on inappropriate conversation topics and whatnot, but culture is so important. It really is. It's important in your neighborhood as it is in your city, as it is in your state, and everywhere else. And it broadens out. And so for that guy to be like just ragging on this woman who he knows nothing about, and most importantly knows nothing about the culture that she lives in, I'm curious like how he handled that. What was he saying? Was he just ridiculing her for being podunk, or was it something more substantial?
So what he was trying to argue very unsuccessfully was that what like a beautiful Southern woman should look like was like this Gone with the Wind Southern Belle type. It's like, dude, like, okay, sure, in certain parts of the South, yeah, that's the traditional beauty standard. But you get out here in fucking BFE, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, a girl in some cutoff shorts and a tight t-shirt that can get in the river and pull out a fucking catfish and is just like objectively gorgeous. That's fucking hot. And yeah, and I would be willing to bet that if she really wanted to, she could get cleaned up and put on that Southern Belle gown and do all of that hoity-toity bullshit too. Or, she could just be naturally beautiful the way she is, and we don't need all of that. Like that, like it was such a very better than you opinion of what Southern beauty should look like.
I think my favorite, like I like a lot of different like brands of women. I dislike a lot of brands of women too. I'm a little bit misogynistic, and it's something that I have to watch out for, to be honest. Like, I can get condescending and stuff with women, and it bugs me a little bit. It certainly bugs people around me. But one like brand of woman that I love is the one who like laughs at inappropriate jokes and crass humor and like can really kind of get in there. And like she'll say stuff like "suck my dick" and stuff like that. Like, I mean, she's just dirty and gross, but also hilarious and fun to be around.
Well, it's like all the hatred for the Hawk Tuah chick. And it's like, she didn't do or say anything crass or terrible. She had a funny line on a man on the street interview thing, and it went viral. That's it. Like, people start just ascribing all of their own values and all their own positions and all of their own morality onto whether or not they liked or disliked her. It's like she had a viral line in a like 15-second interaction. That's literally all you need to know about it. And she's also hot, and from other stuff that you've seen from her, she's objectively just like a normal chick. Like, why why is it so terrible for her to just be a normal chick? Like, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, well, but that kind of stuff radicalizes us too, to, you know, one side of conversations or the other.
I've been arguing with James Lindsay and his fan base for the last 48 hours because this damn Republican National Convention's going on. And James Lindsay, who, you know, like God bless him. He just for the last however many years has been on this kick against communism. And now he's decided he's going to switch gears and be on a kick against fascism because of J.D. Vance. And I'm like, dude, you're so those are two ideologies that are dangerous and gross, but they're dead. Like, fascism died on the vine. It didn't last longer than a couple of countries' regimes before we, you know, went in and took them out, or they just fizzled on their own. And communism died. I mean, it exists still in like North Korea and Cuba, but I mean, what? So what? Those have no.
Does it even exist in Cuba anymore? Since
I don't even know. I have no idea. In any case, it barely exists. Sure, communists exist, but they're not in any power. What he's actually experiencing is just a bunch of different brands of progressivism, which was like the third great ideology to come out of the horrible 20th century, and it's going to die here pretty soon too. And you know, I mean, really, what I would love is for James Lindsay to just realize that, because he's so smart and like so potentially an ally to good causes, but all he wants to do is hate on people who are you know against the same people who he's against. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going with that, but he's just so hysterical right now.
He does a fantastic job of pissing off all the people that should be on his side if he would just like shut up for half a second.
Yeah. He retweeted me last night. That's the only reason I've even been in his little milieu, because he's showing up on my For You tab now, which is just, I should never even look at that thing. It's just full of all the people I don't want to hear from because all my friends debate with them on Twitter. And that's another thing, man. We have got to stop engaging with these debate me bros. Look what happened to Destiny. Like Destiny, how many times does Dave Smith talk to Destiny? Why would you waste your time talking to that guy? Same with something Smith. Is it Adam Smith? Something Smith, Andrew Smith, maybe. Dave had him on his show a couple of weeks ago after they had a formal debate on another show, and it was just excruciating. I couldn't listen to it. It was so bad. I didn't even know who the guy was until I texted a friend. I was like, "Who's this guy on Part of the Problem today?" He was like, "Oh, that's so and so Smith. He's a debate me bro," which is the first time I had ever really heard that phrase. And now that I know that this is a thing, it drives me absolutely. Who cares about your freaking debate, man? Live in the real world. Have a conversation. Don't try to and if it's someone who you're not going to see eye to eye with, then don't have a conversation with them. Like, what's the point? In my opinion, unless it's someone who you're going to be friendly with and could perhaps build some kind of alliance with, either an alliance, against the regime, which whatever, or just an alliance of like friendship, of mutual aid of some sort, your accountability group for your writing group or whatever.
Or just have a conversation period and see, go in unassuming. I think that's the biggest problem I have with the debate me bullshit is you're already going in to be combative. Like, I'm going to take this side and you're going to take this side and we're going to find out who's right. Like, well, fuck that. Why not we all just show up, we talk to each other and figure out who's actually on what side, where, and why. There was I don't know if you remember, there was a Twitter space that got started by, I think she went by like Liberty Kitty or something at the time. And it was, there was one that was going on that was like, why do white people exist? And it was a bunch of black folks. And so she just started one as a joke that was called, why do black people exist? And 2-hour credit, or maybe not credit, but the 15 of us who were in the initial Twitter space when it started, that was why do black people exist? We all changed our profile picture to a Klansman for about 15 minutes just to be fucking stupid. Somehow, and then I had to leave to go to work. So when I drop off of this, there may be 20 of us just like shooting the shit and acting like morons, like making our PFPs Klansmen and shit like that. So I changed mine back to normal and leave to go to work. And on my drive to work, I just like noticed that I'm getting a ton of notifications and stuff popping up on my phone. So I look at it. This thing has gone to like 3,000 people in this space, and it turned into just straight up hatred and fucking awfulness. And after the space, Twitter actually like shut the space down, and it was insane. But like some of the people who were in the space towards the end started like going after her because she had started the space. And so I come to her defense, and I'm like, the whole fucking thing was a joke. Like, y'all came in towards the end of it after it had stopped being a joke. Like, nobody meant anything by this. This was all dumb fun, and then somewhere along the lines it got turned into something not. And this chick got real hostile, and my pinned tweet says something about like, I'll have a conversation with anybody or something to that effect. And she was like, well, back it up. I was like, tell me when, and we'll do it. And so we did. It's like the next week, we sat down and we got on a stream together, and we just started talking. And we talked for about an hour and a half, and it was excellent. And at the end of the day, we agreed on more things than we disagreed on. She actually voted. She voted for Trump in 2016, and like, you know, it was like all kinds of crazy shit. But it was like this complete misunderstanding of a Twitter space turned into all this hatred. And by the time she and I got done with the conversation, like, and I had people that were like in my DMs, like, you need to ask her about this. You need to ask her about this. I'm like, no, shut the fuck up. I'm not trying to argue with her. I'm just trying to talk to another person and figure out why the fuck everything went sideways. And it was great. It was an excellent conversation by all accounts. And like, if people went into these things like that instead of going in like, I'm going to debate you and I'm going to prove that you're wrong about everything and you're an idiot, and like, just why can't people just have a conversation? Like,
it would be nice. There are some people, and this is maybe a new thing for me, and it might just be because I've got a whole bunch more gray in my beard than I did 2 years ago when I ended my podcast, but there's just some people I'm not interested in talking to. I might just be a curmudgeon now, but it just feels like a waste of time sometimes. Although, you know, on the other hand, like I was just, my partner and I kind of have like different friend groups, but they sometimes come together. Like he'll hang out with my libertarian friends and I'll hang out with his friends. And a big contingent of his friends are, you know, trans or otherwise queer. And I was talking to one of his trans friends, who, you know, I've known this guy for so long that, like, you know, we're friends too. And we were talking. He had just come back from Ireland, and I'm using he is his preferred pronoun. So whatever the audience would like to reinterpret my languages. But he and I were talking. He had just come back from Ireland, and he was just absolutely loving how this group of communists in Ireland were like relearning the Irish language and like trying to bring back Irish culture. And like, there's just this great left-wing group that's doing this. And I'm like, name, that sounds a lot more right-wing than left-wing to me. And he was like, wait a second. I'm like, think about the people in America who would be doing stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, I would be calling them fascists, you know, like just kind of realizing like what he was like celebrating. And like, to me, that's like horseshoe theory writ large. And also just like, look, we have, like you just said, we have a lot more in common than we do different. I'm not an American nationalist. I'm like in the Brian McClanahan school of thought that, you know, the United States is more like a, you know, mutual defense and free trade zone. And that the nations inside the United States are more like the regions, or even the states. But give me United States nationalism over progressive globalism any day. I'll vote for Trump over Biden for sure. I'll vote for Vance over fucking, you know, Gavin Newsom. But it is kind of nice. Like I've got to be honest, it's really nice seeing people like really valuing their homeland and the people that live here. Even if I don't necessarily like ideologically agree that this is a homeland and a single people, it's just kind of good to see. It's good to see patriotism becoming like in vogue again after years. And I haven't been to a sporting event in a while, and I was one of those people who would keep my hat on and sit in my seat for the national anthem, and like make a huge show of it. Like I've had people like rip the hat off my head before, just because I was trying to be a jerk. And I'm not gonna say I regret that, because like I was making a statement of belief, and there's something to be said for that. Same with kneeling on the 50-yard line or whatever that what's his face did. But I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. I think I'm going to stand up and take off my hat and like join the collective. Oh, like it gives me the willies even thinking about it. But it's kind of nice. It's really cool. It's like how when you like go on a retreat or like a really powerful church service or a political convention. I mean, I am a convention junkie. You asked me earlier if this was my last libertarian convention. It's probably my last convention as a delegate, but I might just go for the vibes. Because the energy of many people facing a direction and in celebration of a common cause is so powerful to me now, as like 41-year-old James, as opposed to 30-year-old James who was just a jerk. I'm getting like emotional talking about it, because it's like it's been such a huge change in my entire worldview. And you don't experience that often, I guess.
Okay, so there were a few different things.
Sorry, I was rambling as hell, but whatever.
No, you're good. So like the sporting events thing and talking about the national anthem. Yes, I remember like I guess it was probably like post 2004, 2006, somewhere in there, where sentiment really kind of started to turn, and you had. I guess it was because, and this was also the same time that I became anti-political, because the war in Iraq and everything just drug on. Like everybody was all hyped up following 9/11. It's like, yeah, let's go get these motherfuckers. And then it just never ended. And it's the same thing that radicalized a lot of ex-military folks who are now libertarians or even like J.D. Vance. Have you seen the movie Hillbilly Elegy or read it or anything?
No, I actually just pirated the movie, and I've heard lots of interviews with him. I've been a fan of his since I heard him on Reason with Nick Gillespie and Tom Woods and so on and so forth, who all interviewed him when the book came out.
So he's really good stuff, and that was kind of his trajectory as well. Like he, following 9/11, he joined the military, and then like it just never fucking ended, and it really turned him off to the war machine stuff. And so like you had that sentiment started to settle in. I think it was like 2006 thereabouts, and then it really kind of persisted for the next probably 10 years or so. And now since COVID, maybe midterms of Trump's first term, it's started to shift back. So like if I've gone to several college football games, a couple NFL games, and some Major League Baseball games, the national anthem is an event. Like standing there for the national anthem, especially when it's done really well, especially when like like Mark and I went to Michigan, Purdue at the Big House, and like the band to play the national anthem and just the presentation of it and everything, like it's even with me not being a Michigan or a Purdue fan at all, like I am now pumped up for this game. Like I am ready to fucking go. Like just from the national anthem. Like it has taken on a meaning that it used to have, like especially around 9/11. It's taken that back a lot. So
it's like America became more than just a foreign policy somehow, and I don't know what changed really. Like I have no clue. Like I still hate the federal government, and I still hate the COVID regime and whatever else. I agree, Jay Forte. Justin does look handsome.
My wife and I
is very well trimmed.
We had pictures done before we did this. So. So I was like, do I want to change clothes or do I want to just sit down and do it? Like, I'll go wash the shit out of my hair and all that after we get done. Oh, the second thing, something we talked about that I've had the conversation with other people before, but America not just being one country and really not even being the individual states, but being regional type thing.
Yeah.
Like if you think about Johnny Profita and I do peddling fiction together, and we talked about this on an episode of my show one time. Like, if the Hunger Games happen tomorrow, how does it all break down? Because it's not gonna break down by state. Like,
and it's not red or blue state either. A conservative in Alabama has more in common with a liberal in Alabama than he does a conservative in California.
Right.
And that is that it's not the rural urban divide either. Somebody a farmer in Alabama has more in common with someone with a scholar in Birmingham than he does with a farmer in California. It's just the way it is. We are culturally different from region to region, and we're culturally similar within the same regions, regardless of our ideology, worldview, professional background, or whatever else. For the most part. Like, obviously, that's not entirely.
I kind of like did a map, and at first, when I was doing the map of how I thought, like, if we did Hunger Games style regions, how would it break down? At first, I was trying to like do it by what states would most likely go together. But then, even when you start looking at the states and you start thinking about the states, there are very distinct parts of different states that don't really fall in with the rest of that state. Like the northern part of Indiana and the southern part of Indiana are very, very different. The northern part of Illinois and the southern part of Illinois are very, very different. Like when you start looking at the individual states, so then I'm like, okay, I can't draw the lines on like state lines. I have to start like cutting states in half and drawing different lines because like the way these people are going to group together is going to be a lot different than the way, these people are going to group together. And it gets really weird and really interesting. Like I grew up very rurally in Kentucky. I now live in Indiana, and everybody from Kentucky that like I went home yesterday and was home for my parents' church barbecue supper, and everybody's like, "Oh, there's the Yankee coming home." I was like, there are more Confederate flags when I drive around through the part of Indiana that I live in. I see as many or more Confederate flags on like hanging out on doors and or on porches and stuff than I do even back home. I'm like, they're a little more Southern heritage than y'all are. Like, y'all might need to step your game up. They feel like they get lumped in with the Yankees wrongly, and like it's interesting.
I moved from Texas to Minnesota 14 and a half years ago. Holy shit, I've been here a long time. And when I get the same, I get called a Yankee and to me, like, Yankee is just the worst slur you can call a person who isn't other than like the N-word or something that's like actual bad. And I correct them. I'm like, look, man, I may live in the North, but first of all, you don't know what Yankee means. Like go read something over at the Abbeville Institute to learn what that word really means. But I'm like the opposite of a Yankee, and it drives me absolutely nuts when people call me that. I know I shouldn't be so thin-skinned, but geez.
You hadn't picked up that Yankee accent. I'm like, the people that I live around have a stronger Southern accent than most of the people I grew up with.
Listen, when you told me you were when you lived in Indiana, I was like, what? Like, who talks like that in Indiana? That's so funny.
Everybody, like around here, everybody thought like this is just a normal accent. It was so funny. So my wife lived in, and this is where like the state lines kind of get blurred. My wife lived in Louisville for 10 years, and not just like lived in Louisville. Like she was like downtown bar scene, Derby, like all of that, like very extremely progressive, liberal inner city Louisville. And then she moved back here not long before we met, and whenever her grandma, she hates that I tell this, and she swears that it didn't happen, but whenever her grandmother would call her accent would change immediately. she sounded like me whenever her
Yep.
grandmother would call. And I thought it was the funniest shit ever. And after she get off the phone, I'd start making fun of her and talking. Like I'd even ratchet up my twang a little bit and be like, "Hey, Mamo." She's like, "I don't sound like that." I'm like, "I'm going to record you next time she calls because you dead on. You turn as Southern as they come as soon as your grandmother calls."
I come home from a week of like getting high with my mom for like a week straight, and you like, oh my Lord, I didn't even have an accent when I lived down there, like a little one, I guess. If you call my voicemail, you can hear it, because it's from 2009. But I start talking like my mom. It's just like, and that's not how she talks. I can't even do her accent like on command. It's just crazy, and it takes me a few days to start talking normal again. And then if I get high up here, which I partake every so often, and it comes out again, especially if I'm in a group of people and getting excited. It's nice too. Like I kind of like it. Like it makes me feel like I'm a person from a place, which is, again, it's like a new thing to me. I'm not a rootless cosmopolitan, in other words.
There is some like research that's been done on that, and I've tried to sound more professional, I guess, whenever I do some things, and kind of try to tamp down my accent a little bit. But then at other times, like I've had people tell me, like, don't do that. Like, don't try to tamp your accent down. Like, just let it go. They're like, because that's unique. That's like, people don't have strong accents anymore.
This is the end of the 20th century. I mean, the 20th century was the century when everybody dropped their accents because it made them sound dumb and regional and whatever. And we're just beyond that now. It's so refreshing that people tell you that. That's really cool.
Well, and that's all of this kind of goes back to that. It's a melting pot, but at the same time, like like the things that made New York City great when it was really in its heyday was they talked about how it was a melting pot, but you had Chinatown and you had like where all the Irish were. Like, yes, it was all of those communities were together, but they were also very separate together. Like,
yeah,
they had their own areas and they had their own things that made them unique and special. It was once that I call it like a forced integration, but it's once they started like forcing all of them together, then everything just really went to shit. And I'm sure you see some of that, feeling like you live in a place that you're kind of out of place. Like, whenever all of these different things are getting forced together, like you said, not only do they not really benefit each other, they start to hurt each other because they're not meant to blend like that.
In college, I studied organizational studies, which is, it's a bullshit degree that ends in studies. But one of the classes we took was like on cultural diversity, and it wasn't. I was going into it just thinking it was gonna be this just horrible, like, woke, like even when I was in college, this just like horrible indoctrination, like leftist indoctrination class. And actually, it was really interesting. And one of the concepts they talk about was, so you've got the image of the melting pot, but then beyond that, there's the image of the salad bowl, where like the lettuce stays lettuce and the tomatoes stay tomatoes, but they live together. Like it's not that they merge. They're distinct from one another, and they're additive to the salad. I think it's really when some chef is like, that salad's not good enough, I'm gonna throw in some blueberries and sardines and marshmallows and whatever else, that it like really starts, like, this is no longer the salad that I wanted to eat. Quit throwing more shit in my salad, chef.
Right. Let the pieces that are supposed to be there exist and have their own unique flavor that makes the whole thing work. Yeah, it's when you start trying to add extra shit that doesn't belong, then it really kind of fucks everything up. Actually, I knew this sounded familiar in the back of my head. I actually did an episode back in November of this last year, where I covered an article that was called "The Downside of Diversity," that like went through studies that showed where like the more diversification you had in a lot of these, like especially urban settings, the more it ended up creating division and these like communities where in a lot of cases they would start out as like naturally blended communities where like people would move in, and because it was a place that they thought they would fit, and so they move in, and even though they're not from there and they're not the usual folks from there, it works really well. But then you start getting outside influences that are bringing other people in, and so now, not only do these other people not get along with the people who don't look like them, they also don't get along with the people who do look like them, because those people came here for different reasons, and so the whole thing ends up.
Yeah.
So then you get all the people who were there originally move out and say fuck this, and then other people get brought in that also don't belong and don't mix well, and it destroys more than it builds. And I think, interestingly enough, as you said, we're kind of on the tail end. You had a poll the other day. You said, is wokeness dead? And I can't remember which option. The one I picked did not win. I said yes, number days. No,
that's my position too, and it's academic agents, and I think and I hope that Oren's going to end up owing him a cigar. The one that won was no, but it's diminishing.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's good. That's a step in the right direction. But like you said, we're on the back side of this, and it's starting to. I don't know if you want to say the world is starting to heal, but people are starting to figure out that like this shit does not work. It's not a long-term solution to anything. It just breeds more. It just breeds more conflict.
Like politically, the right-wing party is becoming actually right-wing, and the left-wing party is becoming actually left-wing. And while I'm not a leftist, I would much rather have a left-wing party than a like horrific globalist progressive octopus whatever party. Like I don't want the Democratic Party and the Republican Party of the Bushes to stay how they are. I want to see like the Ron Paul, Vivek Ramaswamy Republicans take over, and the Bernie Sanders or ideally hell the Dennis Kucinich Democrats to take over that party and like actually get shit done, because those are the people who like get it. They're not woke, but they're awake. And I think that is like the dynamic duo of like culture building, because you do need a left wing. You need like subcultures. It's so important to have people who and sorry, I know we're like getting kind of over time here, and I'm gonna have to go here pretty soon, but you hear a lot about like marginalized people and like normalized sex work or whatever, like all of this stuff where they want to take people who are on the margins. They're not marginalized, they're marginal. Like they're actually on the like gay people and trans people and like artists and just general weirdos and stuff. Like they're on the margins because they're weird. They're on the margins because there's not many of them. That's just the definition of on the margins. They're not marginalized. It's not like someone said, "Oh, you're on the margins now. Go over there." And there's a little bit of that for sure. But like they could act normal. They could just fit in. But they don't, and that's really important, because that's how you build culture. Like cultures stagnate if there's not a subculture educating that culture and trickling stuff up. They're not going to trickle every single thing up. Like I don't think it's ever going to catch on that trans kids should run away from home so that they can go to some organization or whatever. Something like rock and roll music and dancing with your hips and stuff like that trickled up from the subculture, from black subcultures and things like that. And really, like it kind of made the predominant culture a little bit better, a little bit like more, a little bit freer, a little bit more like loose.
And having those as cultures that are on the margin. So BAP talks about it a little bit in Bronze Age Mindset. Like you had those things that have existed all through history, and they have brought culture and other things up, but they didn't become the culture. Like
exactly.
The good parts of them filtered up through it, and then the really weird, off-putting stuff was able to stay weird and off-putting on its own, and not create the scenario that we talked about at the very beginning, where now you start seeing all of that in your face so much that it turns you off to it, and you're just like, I don't want anything to do with any of that anymore.
Am I echoing BAP?
No. Maybe. I don't know.
That's gonna. I haven't read Bronze Age Mindset. I think I've read a lot of reviews of it, and I know a lot of people who are fans of it. I guess I should pick it up because that's exactly like that. What you just said is exactly what I've been thinking for the last like year or so, and just trying to like work out in my head how that
not
works.
For everybody. Mark and I did a review of it and talked about it relatively in depth. It's definitely not for everybody, but there is a lot of stuff in there that talks about a lot of the same stuff that we've been talking about on a little more of a like a technical level, but and also from a historical point of view on stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's like having those subcultures and stuff exist is important, but it's also important that they've remained subcultures. And then
exactly. Yeah, dude. It's important. It's important not just for the predominant culture that they remain subculture, but it's important for the subculture that they remain subculture. Because otherwise they become powerful, and they don't. You can't be a powerful subculture. That doesn't make sense. That's opposites. Right. So yeah, I'm so glad that I'm not the only person who's ever thought that, and that much smarter people than me have actually written about it. I'm gonna have to go pick up that book. That's great.
Yeah. I recommend it. Like I said, it's not for everybody. So there are parts of it that are hard to get through, but
Sure.
It is very good, and it's got a lot of good stuff in it. I have made my son listen to the audiobook of it just so he like has some idea of some of those ideas and stuff, and like he gets some good stuff out of it, and he's also like, that's really weird. I'm like, yes, it's supposed to be weird. That's how you're
by a guy named Bronze Age pervert. What do you expect?
It's supposed to be weird. That's kind of the point. But yeah, it's I highly recommend it. And like I said, it does get into a little more depth on some of the stuff that we've talked about. But like all of this stuff is, I think it's really important, and it's things that people need to be paying attention to, because it is going to be very important over the next several years. Like, I had conversations with my dad when I was in high school, and I was a big history buff, and I was really into the Roman Empire. And the more that I looked at it, the more I was like, oh shit, like this is the United States. And like, 20 plus years ago, I was having a conversation with my dad. I was like, I feel like we are Rome. And I feel like we're on like a 50 to 70 year trajectory of where we are going to see the collapse of the Roman Empire like happen to the United States. And now 20 years later, I'm like, I might have had that timeline out about like twice what it's going to be. I think like technology has sped all of that up, and now we're seeing it really build to a head and come to fruition a lot quicker than what I had originally expected that it would, when I was a fucking teenager and stupid. So like, a lot of these conversations and a lot of the things that we're talking about and we're seeing happening, a lot of other people are going to start seeing them. And if they're not prepared for it and they don't understand what's going on, it's going to seem really fucking scary. But it's not. Like, it needs to happen, and it can happen in a healthy, beneficial way if intelligent people help it along in that way.
Yeah, we don't have to enter the Dark Ages, which I know that the Dark Ages is kind of a myth, but hey, I have a question for you as someone who's more educated in that than I am. And I actually asked Titus Pillow this, and we got into a conversation, and then he was like, I have to go to work. I'll text you after work. And he never did. So I probably should message him back. Maybe he listens to the show. I don't know. But do you think we're more akin to the end of the Roman Empire, or more akin to like the transition from Republic to Empire?
Not the end of the empire, but the end of the republic. Yeah, we are seeing. So, at the end of the republic, you saw the government got incredibly corrupt. They kept adding more people to the government as to manipulate, and then it stopped being a government of the people and became the government and the people, and that's what we have literally right now. And then like, you saw things. That's the next Substack I'm going to write. So I asked my Snapchat AI a bunch of questions about the end of the the end of the Roman Republic and the things that were going on with Caesar leading up to Caesar taking charge. And then I started asking it questions about Trump and a lot of the things that have been done to Trump over the last 3 years. And you see a lot of the answers line up very
Oh, interesting.
Very not necessarily like what. Who was it? I've heard Tho Bishop say it. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Yeah.
So like you start to see a lot of very close similarities between what the Roman Empire or the Roman Congress was doing to Caesar leading up to his rise to power, and what the government has been doing to Trump over the last 3 years as he has been gaining popularity. Really interesting shit. Like I said, I need to. I've got it all like screenshots of the whole thing. I need to sit down and write a Substack on it because it is really interesting, the parallels. So yeah, I think we're in that part. Like we're about to go from republic to empire. And
I'm frankly surprised you were able to have a substantial conversation with your Snapchat AI. I can get ChatGPT to like say, stop being so like cringe progressive, but Snapchat's AI, like it has dug its heels in. I've never I was like, hey, what about this thing about climate change that you're not talking about? And it's like, no, climate change is ready for a catastrophe, and we're gonna all die in 2032. Just wait.
We fight a lot, and I got it to reluctantly agree to allowing me to call it Napoleon. And
that's great.
I don't save very many of my conversations with it because usually it'll shut me down and it won't want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
Or eventually it'll fall back into like just the death spiral of it just keeps saying I can't. That's problematic or something along those lines. But I am able to coax it into telling me
that's really cool
from time to time.
See, again, the world is healing. I bet you a year ago it wouldn't have been able to do that.
Oh, probably not. And it still won't. After I make all of the connections for it, and like I build the whole thing of Rome and Caesar, and then the U.S. government and Trump, I'm like, seems like these things look pretty similar, don't they? And then it's like, oh no, we're not talking about that anymore. Let's talk about something else. I'm like, okay, I mean, look, I'm just putting it all out there for you. If I can teach Snapchat AI to make some connections, then maybe I can prevent Skynet from coming online. I don't know.
Oh, sweet. I think I have one other bullet point that I didn't hit in my little hey, I don't want to talk about gay shit all night. Oh, you know what? Actually, you tweeted out earlier that you said something like if you it was about this like current day cancel culture, like the week that the right actually has the moral uphand because Trump got shot, and we're having this huge argument online, and this is July 18th, 2024 for you people in the future who don't even remember this, where like all of a sudden all these left-wingers are saying, oh, I wish the shooter hadn't missed, and they're all losing their jobs, like Home Depot's firing people and stuff. And right-wingers are having this huge online conversation and debate and fight about whether it's okay for us to be canceling people or whether we should stick to our principles and not. And you made it more of a strategic thing than a principled thing. Are you able to rephrase that? Do you remember what you said?
Which one was it? Because I had a few.
Well,
on
so
that topic.
I'm really, really ambivalent. I'm very, very torn on this. So yours, you said, before responding to any of my tweets about people getting fired, answer this question. Did someone on the left literally dox me and or try to get me fired from my job? If the answer is no, I sincerely don't care what your opinion is going after them with their own weapons. And that's an argument I've been having all the last 2 days. Is if you're in a battle and your opponent drops his weapon, do you pick it up and use it against him, or do you like do the honorable thing and let him pick up his own weapon and start using it against you? And the only thing about that is that we're unarmed. I like we have our opponent's weapon in hand right now, and we're not going to have it for long. Like the media is going to give the left the moral high ground again, within days. And so to me, like the Machiavellian in me, like says, no, you pick it up and you use it. But the strategist in me, which I'm not a great strategist, which is why I second guess myself, says, like, if we escalate this fight rather than show that we're the better people, then the bad people are going to get it and they're going to escalate it all the more against us when they do have the narrative back in their favor. So I'm so torn on this, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not going to get anybody fired. It is completely against my personality to go cancel people, but like, is it justified? I don't know. I mean,
so I don't know if you saw it or not. I recently narrowly survived my own firing.
No, I didn't see that.
So yeah, what was it? Last Monday, the 8th, for those who are keeping score, I went back to work after having been off for a week. I'd had a couple vacation days. We went to a Cardinals game, had some days off, and then 4th of July and all of that. So I go back to work on the 8th. And as soon as I get to work, I'm told that I need to go to my boss's office, that HR needs to talk to me. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go up there, and they have all of these printouts of all of my offending Facebook posts. It was only Facebook posts. And if it had been Twitter, I probably would have gotten fired on the spot. But the Facebook stuff was super tame, very mild, like nothing, whole lot of nothing burgers. And so they go through all, like the HR chick, like lays it all out and is like, what do you have to say about this? And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to say. Like, obviously it's me. I made the post. Like, am I supposed to feel bad about it? Like, this is nothing at all. And they're like, well, we'll have to get with legal and talk to them, and there will be an investigation, and you'll have to stay off the property until then. I was like, so are you telling me to go home? She's like, yes, you'll have to go home. I was like, later. And I went and got in my truck and drove my happy ass home. And I was like, and I even told him, I was like, I'm on vacation. Like, I'm supposed to work tonight and tomorrow night, and then I'm on vacation until the 22nd. So just like, let me know what y'all decide to do, because I'm not supposed to be back until the 22nd anyway. So bye. So after the investigation, and everything, and I talked to HR and like I asked questions. Like, I was like, did I create a hostile work environment? Has somebody actually complained? Like, did I discriminate against anybody? Like, where is this coming from? And it turns out it was like the screenshots that she had printed were sent directly to the corporate consumer affairs HR person. Like, it was some Karen that I disagreed with on Facebook about something, who then took screenshots and like had to hunt me down, because my Facebook account that I like talk shit on, I don't link to anything in my life. Like, it's just a picture of me and I post shit. So she had to like hunt me down to figure out where I worked, and then send screenshots of my Facebook posts to corporate HR. So like, yeah, I just came out of like, you know, I didn't think that they were going to fire me. And if they did fire me, I already had plans to like dump my entire 401k and get a lawyer, because at least a couple of the posts that they had printed out would be targeting me for religious and political beliefs, not for actually being offensive. And so, hey, like, we can go to court and really, really have some fun here if that's the direction y'all want to go. Didn't come to that. They called me back, said, you know, you get to keep your job. You have to put all of your accounts on private, like remove anybody that from work from your friends or followers lists. And then I have to do like a refresher on the corporate social media policy stuff whenever I get back next week. So
I'm embarrassed to say that I was an enforcer of the corporate social media policy for a little while.
So I get to go back and do all the bullshit, and it all ended up being fine. But, you know, there for the better part of a week, it was all up in the air. And like, everybody that I asked, I was like, am I getting fired or what? The fuck is going on here? They're like, well, I don't think so, but also like, I really don't know. So anyway, I just came.
I'm glad you didn't lose your job.
So that's why I have a pretty strong opinion on it of like, I'm not going to go out of my way to do it, but if we have that weapon in our hand, we need to be using it. Like, and I'm sorry that some overweight cashier at Home Depot got fired, but they've spent the last 10 years trying to destroy the business of a baker for no more reason than he wouldn't make a cake. They went after a kid who literally just stood there while some dude screamed in his face. They went after a kid for wearing a headdress at an NFL game. Like, they've gone after kids. They've gone after people that are even like, so yes, you've got the weapon in your hand, wield it to the full power that you have the ability to. But that's, I mean,
right. That's I mean, and that's a perfectly, it's such a, I'm not going to argue against it because I can't. Like, I mean, you're right. But also, I think the other side is probably right too. Like, I don't know. So that's it. I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to argue about it. I'm going to take in all the sides, and the conversation's going to be over in a few days anyway. So, like, that's great. And then I'm not going to shed a tear for Home Depot lady, and I'm not going to go after anybody at Home Depot either.
Right.
And I'm not, whatever. So that was one bullet point. The other bullet point is no, we hit it. We have hit all of my bullet points now. This is great.
Awesome. Well, you got anything to plug?
Actually, my dulcet tones are going to be narrating documentaries and audiobooks and e-learning and videos and stuff like that. If my dear audience members, you will hire me and encourage your content creator friends to hire me. I have not launched yet, but I do have my site up. It's at Voice of the Curious. It's Voice of the Curious, but it's like voiceofthecurio.us. And go there, give me your name and your email address. I'm going to be blogging there as well. It's going to be like a values-based service. I'm not just going to be like, working with just anybody. I'm going to be working with our people only. But what that means is I need a lot of clients. So if you or anybody would like to hear from me and what I have to say, or would like to hire me to do narration for your books and documentaries and whatnot, hit me up. That's all. Oh, and if you want my old podcast, it's at blackbird.substack.com. There's not much there since 2022, but there's some pretty interesting conversations.
Very much so. Well, James, thank you very much. This has been awesome. Hopefully we didn't hit too much on the stuff that you didn't want to hit on, and we definitely
we did great. Justin, you are one of two people who have randomly invited me to be on their shows in the next couple of weeks. So this was a great, I feel like I did pretty well. And you're, as always, just an amazing conversation partner. I can't believe we've been talking for an hour and a half. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Definitely. Thanks again. And for everybody listening, I'll have links to all of James's stuff, so you can go check that stuff out. And in the meantime, I will be back probably not next week, but I should be back the week after. Probably have Don the Pleb on for another Ways of the World. So be sure to tune in for that. And check out the Substack. I'll put my thing, my argument with my Snapchat AI up on my Substack sometime here soon too. So that'll all be coming soon. Have a good one, everybody.